Alright, so these are everybody's people for Rachel's shindig. See lots of people, more than 5.
Plus the one behind the camera.
And me. Hi, not Rachel. Here's everybody from the back, so you know they're real. Okay, and then...
No, we just got some Hollywood people to come in and make
and you need to see the cards.
People.
Okay, so you know there's no full sentences except for quotes. No card 1. No card 2. No sentences except for quotes.
Kimmy, you're so good at this.
Thanks. I'm a budding Spielberg. And... action!
Thank you everybody for coming. Today I will be doing a speech called A Holocaust. Imagine, you're a Jewish boy. You're living in Hungary in the spring of 1944. You're 15 years old and you live with your parents and your sister. News is spreading throughout your village that the Germans are in Hungary. However, no one thinks that they will come past Budapest. 3 days later, the German soldiers enter your village. They instate new rules. Jews are not allowed to own jewelry. Jews must wear the Star of David on their outer clothes. There's curfew for all Jewish people. Everyone must be in their homes by 6 p.m. In the spring, the Germans create ghettos. You move into the ghettos with your family. The ghettos are cramped and there aren't a lot of supplies. Summer comes and all Jews are ordered to the train station. You see your father cry for the first time. This unnerves you. You arrive at the train station and are packed 80 per car. You're given a few loaves of bread and a few buckets of water. There is no room to breathe. There's no bathroom. After a few days, the stench and the heat become unbearable. You feel as if you are suffocating. A few days go by and the train slows. Someone near the wall reads a sign. You've arrived at Auschwitz. No one has heard of this place. The trains are unloaded. You're told to leave all belongings in the train. Women go to the right, men go to the left. You see your mother and your sister for the last time. Someone comes up to you and asks you how old you are. You say you're 15. He tells you that you are now 18. Your father is not 50, he is 40. As you march to selection, you see men throwing logs into a fire. Upon closer inspection, you realize that these are not logs, they're the bodies of babies and children. You and your father pass the selection, and you settle into life in the concentration camps, where you are whipped, starved, suffer from malnutrition and frostbite. You watch your father waste away, and you watch your father die. In the camps, you are known as A7713, but your name is Elie Wiesel. You will survive the Holocaust, go on to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and you will become the author of the book Night. On April 15, 1945, you will be liberated. You will catch sight of yourself in the mirror. You will not realize or recognize the corpse you have become. Between 1933 and 1945, Nazi Germany murdered 11 million people. To put this into perspective, the 1940 census calculated a total population of 10,699,005 people living in Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming, Vermont, New Hampshire, Arizona, Idaho, New Mexico, Utah, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Washington, D.C., Rhode Island, Maine, Oregon, and Colorado. In just 13 years, the Nazis killed enough people to wipe out 17 of the United States. 6 million of the 11 million were Jews. 5 million were Soviet prisoners of war, Soviet civilians, Jehovah's Witnesses, the disabled, homosexuals, and other political and religious opponents. 1.1 million of these were children. The Nazis came up with numerous ways to get rid of whom they called the unworthy. 2 ways were they set up concentration camps and they set up ghettos. Before the camps, all Jewish people were crammed into ghettos in their hometown. In Warsaw, Poland, the most famous ghetto of all, 400,000 people lived in 3 square miles. This was roughly 30% of the population at that time. They suffered from starvation and typhoid. By April 1941, 6,000 people were dying every month. Carts would roll by to collect the dead between 4 and 5 a.m. Their family members would have to leave them outside naked because they needed their clothes to barter for food and other goods. The guards in the ghettos were not kind. Joseph Scheer was a survivor of a ghetto and of a concentration camp. He told a story about when his grandma was 92 years old. All the Jews were ordered to the center of the plaza to be deported. The grandmother tried to reason with one of the German soldiers by telling, "Leave me in my house. I'm 92. What are you going to do, drag me?" The soldier responded with, "You old goat, you still want to live?" He put one bullet into her. It did not kill her. We have to win the war. We can't afford more than one bullet. Transition from life to the ghettos was hard. Concentration camps were harder. Concentration camps made the ghettos look good. A well-known concentration camp was Auschwitz. It was 37 miles west of Krakow. In Auschwitz, 960,000 Jews were killed, 74,000 Poles, 21,000 Gypsies, 15,000 Soviet POWs, and 10 to 15,000 other nationalities. Other concentration camps included Buchenwald, Sobibor, and Treblinka. When you first arrived at a concentration camp, you were selected. You went up, split men to women, and then you went to another split. You split half to the gas chamber if they didn't think you could work, and the other half went to hard labor. Elie Wiesel was in the concentration camp when another selection went down. They had a doctor that would come, and if you were too weak to work, you were sent to be murdered. He received tips from the veteran inmates, such as pinch your cheeks, run to the doctor as fast as you can to prove that you can work, and most of all, most importantly, do not show fear. Buna, a sub-camp of Auschwitz, is where Solomon Radovsky was sent. Solomon Radovsky is another survivor of the Holocaust. He was a train track laborer, and he was sent to haul heavy steel beams to create the tracks with. One day he was carrying a steel beam and he fell, but he couldn't get up. His boss, otherwise known as a capo, beat and yelled at him. He had to wait until the beatings were over before he could try to get up again. The Nazis made sure that the concentration camps didn't have any of the basic necessities needed. Elie Wiesel and his dad were at camp in the winter of 1944. They had rags, some shoes, some had no shoes. It was snowing and it was below freezing. They had to run to be transported from Buna to another camp. They came to an abandoned village to rest. Since it was snowing and below freezing, many had fallen out. The guards didn't bother to shoot them because they were dead in minutes from freezing. At the abandoned village, Eli and his father took turns resting while the other one would stand watch so that he wouldn't fall asleep. They came to the new camp and were put into barracks for 3 days without food or water. Food in concentration camps usually included bread, a little bit of soup, and occasionally black coffee. Clothes, when you first came into a concentration camp, you went through a line where you were handed clothes at random. You could be 6'5" and get a pair of boys' pants. You could be a boy and get a man's jacket. They would try to meet up and trade with each other later. Oftentimes, you would save your rations to be able to trade for favors in camps. There was no money, no way of getting news, so some people would trade their bread for a piece of news from home. There was no heat, there was no blankets, and if there were just scraps of fabric to put over themselves. The conditions were truly horrible. In closing, the Nazis thought of a variety of ways to degrade and dehumanize the Jews and other victims of the Holocaust. The survivor stories I've told you paint a picture of the cruelty that everyone endured. April 11th through the 18th is the National Days of Remembrance. And I will close with a quote from the preface of the New Translation of Night by Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel calls himself a witness, and he says, "The witness has forced himself to testify for the youth of today, for the children who will be born tomorrow. He does not want his past to become their future." Thank you.
Very good.
Nope. Did you turn it off?
No.